For over 30 years, the world of computing was governed by a single name, Intel. They weren't just a manufacturer. They were the architects of the digital age. From the first microprocessor to the chips inside 90% of the world's computers, Intel's dominance was so absolute that the Intel Inside logo became a global seal of trust. But today, that empire is crumbling. A $200 billion collapse in market value, the suspension of dividends that investors relied on for decades, and a desperate wave of 15,000 layoffs. The giant isn't just stumbling, it is fighting for its very soul. To understand how the most powerful semiconductor company in history reached this breaking point, we have to go back to the source of their power. Moore's Law. Gordon Moore, Intel's co-founder, predicted that the number of transistors on a chip would double every 2 years, leading to exponential growth in power. For 40 years, Intel didn't just follow this law. They enforced it. Their tick-tock manufacturing model was the heartbeat of Silicon Valley. A tick meant a smaller transistor. A tock meant a new architecture. It was a machine that worked with clockwork precision, leaving rivals like AMD and IBM in the dust. But dominance breeds arrogance. By the mid-2010s, Intel had no serious competition. AMD was on the verge of bankruptcy, and mobile chips were seen as toys compared to Intel's powerful Xeon processors. This lack of pressure changed Intel's DNA. They stopped being an engineering company and started being a bean company. Instead of investing every cent into the next breakthrough, they focused on share buybacks to keep the stock price high and protected their massive profit margins. They became complacent, releasing minor 5% performance improvements year after year, effectively milking their customers because those customers had nowhere else to go. This complacency led to the greatest technical disaster in the company's history, the 10-nanometer stall. While the rest of the industry began moving toward a revolutionary technology called extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, Intel's leadership decided it was too expensive and unnecessary. They believed their own engineers could find a cheaper way to shrink transistors. They were wrong. For 7 years, Intel was stuck. Every time they tried to move to the next generation, the chips came out broken or inefficient. The tick-tock rhythm didn't just slow down, it stopped. It stopped. While Intel was paralyzed by its own manufacturing failures, the world was moving on. A massive shift was happening in the East. TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, was perfecting the foundry model. Unlike Intel, which designed and built its own chips, TSMC only built chips for others. Because they worked with everyone up NVIDIA, Qualcomm, they gained experience faster than Intel ever could. Soon, TSMC surpassed Intel in precision. This created a massive opening for AMD. Under the leadership of Lisa Su, AMD abandoned its own failing factories and moved its production to TSMC. Suddenly, the underdog had better manufacturing than the king. In just a few years, AMD went from near bankruptcy to taking nearly 25% of the server market's most profitable fortress. But even the AMD threat was small compared to what happened next. The AI revolution. For 50 years, the CPU, the central processing unit, was the brain of the computer. Intel was the master of the CPU. But AI requires a different kind of math. It requires thousands of simple calculations happening simultaneously, a task perfectly suited for the GPU, or graphics processing unit. Jensen Huang and NVIDIA had spent 2 decades building an ecosystem called CUDA, making their GPUs the only choice for AI. When ChatGPT and generative AI exploded onto the scene, the center of gravity in the tech world shifted overnight. Data centers that used to be filled with thousands of Intel CPUs were suddenly being rebuilt with NVIDIA GPUs. Intel was caught completely off guard, left with a 20th century product in a 21st century revolution. The humiliation didn't stop at AI. Intel's oldest partners began to realize they didn't need the Silicon King anymore. Apple, once Intel's most prestigious client, shocked the world by ditching Intel chips for their own M-series silicon by using ARM architecture and TSMC's superior manufacturing. Apple created laptops that were faster, cooler, and had tripled the battery life of Intel-based machines. It was a public declaration that Intel's x86 architecture was no longer the gold standard. Microsoft, Amazon, And Google soon followed suit, designing their own custom silicon to bypass Intel's high prices and aging technology. Now, Intel finds itself in a do-or-die moment. The current CEO, Pat Gelsinger, is attempting a Hail Mary Passa total restructuring of the company. The plan is called EDMA Vinci. Intel is splitting its design business from its manufacturing business, essentially trying to become a Western version of TSMC. They are betting over $100 billion on new factories in Ohio and Germany, hoping to win back the business of the very companies that abandoned them. But building these fabs takes years, and Intel is burning through cash at an alarming rate. With 15% of their workforce gone and their stock price at a 10-year low, the margin for error is zero. Intel's 18A process, scheduled for late 2025, is the finish line. If 18A works, Intel might reclaim the performance crown and save the company. If it fails, or even if it is delayed, Intel may be forced to break itself apart or face a hostile takeover. We are witnessing the possible end of an era. The fall of Intel serves as a brutal warning to every tech giant from Google to Microsoft. No matter how big your monopoly, no matter how deep your pockets, the moment you stop innovating, the clock starts ticking. In the fast-moving world of silicon, you either define the future or you become the past. Intel spent years looking in the rearview mirror, and now the rest of the world has passed them by. The king is in exile, and the throne is occupied by those who saw the future when Intel refused to look. Thanks for watching. If you found this story fascinating, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the world of technology.